I was scrolling through social media this morning, doom scrolling, really, and I think I saw like 3 different posts about dopamine detoxes or how to get your next dopamine hit.
Oh, it's everywhere.
It's become this huge buzzword. We treat it like it's this biological cookie our brain gives us for being good. You eat the chocolate, you get a point. You get a you get a point.
And that is the prevailing myth of our time.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it's completely fundamentally incomplete. If you think dopamine is just about pleasure, you're missing the entire operating system of your own brain.
Which is exactly why we're doing this today. We're looking at a transcript of a really dense, heavy-hitting conversation between the neurobiologist Andrew Huberman and Dr. Montague.
Right.
And for anyone who doesn't know Montague, he isn't just, theorizing from a textbook. He's a pioneer in computational neuroscience. This is the guy who's actually measuring these chemicals in human brains in real time.
He's looking at the raw code. And what he reveals is that dopamine isn't a treat. It's a sophisticated learning algorithm. It's the currency your brain uses to value everything from a sandwich to a stock tip. And here's the kicker. It is the exact same algorithm that powers the artificial intelligence that's currently beating humans at their own games.
So our mission today is to upgrade your operating system manual. We're going to move beyond this idea of the hit and look at how dopamine actually runs your life. We're going to talk about why it's actually a prediction error signal, this weird seesaw relationship it has with serotonin.
Including a massive bombshell about how antidepressants might actually work.
Yes. And we'll even get into how being, hangry literally rewires your brain's entire reward system.
It really is a journey from the brainstem to the future of AI.
Okay, let's unpack this. Dr. Montague starts by just blowing up the whole pleasure idea. He basically says, look, if dopamine were just about feeling good when you get what you want, we would have gone extinct a long, long time ago.
Think about it biologically. If a single goal food, a partner, money, if that satisfied you completely, the system would just stop. You'd get the food, you'd be happy, you'd sit on a rock and never move again.
And in the wild, if you stop moving, you die.
You die. Montague explains that the system is designed to keep you tracking, to keep pushing you to the next place.
So it's less about, I got the reward, and more about, okay, what's next?
Precisely. The core function of dopamine is learning and foraging. And it does this through something called reward prediction error.
Reward prediction error. That sounds like a glitch message on my laptop. But Montague uses this really accessible analogy about the weather to explain it.
Yeah, the weather example is perfect. He credits this to Rich Sutton. So imagine it's Wednesday. You check your weather app, and it predicts 2 inches of rain for Saturday.
Okay, got it. 2 inches. Saturday hasn't happened yet. I haven't seen a drop of rain.
Right. You're just living your life on Wednesday. But then Friday rolls around. You check the app again. And now the forecast has changed. It says 10 inches of rain.
So the forecast got a lot worse. Or wetter, anyway.
But notice what just happened in your brain. It still hasn't rained. You haven't received the actual outcome. But your expectation changed. Dopamine encodes that change, that difference between what you expected yesterday and what you expect today.
Whoa. So dopamine isn't the rain, it's the update about the rain.
Correct. It is tracking the delta. The surprise. It's this continuous loop of updating your model of the world based on better than expected or worse than expected.
Right, because in the real world, you don't just get an expectation and then, bam, an immediate reward. There are these long stretches of nothing.
Exactly. Think about a game of checkers. You're making move after move. You're updating your prediction of winning long before you actually win the game. If you only got dopamine when you won, you'd never have the motivation to make the 20 moves to get there.
He calls this foraging, which I love, and he applies it to dating, which just makes so much sense.
The dating market analogy is perfect for this.
It's the sawtooth pattern. You meet someone's spike. That's a positive prediction error. This is better than I expected. Then you learn their messy dip, negative prediction error. Then they plan a really thoughtful date spike again.
And that sawtooth pattern is dopamine. It's what's driving you to forage for a mate, for resources, for a better situation. It's not the destination. It's the engine of the journey itself.
And this leads us to the other side of the coin. What happens when that engine breaks down? This was a huge aha moment for me in the reading about Parkinson's disease.
It is a really profound insight.
Usually we think of Parkinson's as a movement disorder, shaking, stiffness, trouble walking. But Montague calls it an active freezing disease.
And that distinction changes everything. In Parkinson's, you lose about 70 to 75% of your dopamine neurons in the brainstem before you even show symptoms. Now remember, we just said dopamine is about prediction and value.
So these neurons are kind of the accountants of the brain?
In a way, yes. Every single movement you make costs energy. Your brain has to calculate. Is it worth the caloric cost to move my arm to grab that cup of coffee? In a healthy brain, the dopamine signal says, yes, coffee is valuable, go.
But in a Parkinson's patient?
The signal is lost. The noise floor is too high. The brain looks at the world, it sees the cup, but it can't calculate a value high enough to justify the energy cost. It decides it costs energy to move, and I can't see the reward clearly, so let's stay put.
That's heartbreaking. So they aren't physically paralyzed. They're paralyzed by a lack of perceived value. The go signal just isn't firing.
Exactly. Which brings us to its counterpart. Because if dopamine is the go signal, biology dictates we need a wait signal.
Enter serotonin. Now, pop culture strikes again here. I always thought serotonin was the mood stabilizer, the happy chemical. But in this conversation, they describe it as part of an opponent process.
Think of a seesaw. In many contexts, when dopamine goes up, serotonin goes down, and vice versa. While dopamine signals positive expectation and action, serotonin often signals negative expectation and inhibition.
They describe this experiment with a rodent that really clarifies this. There's cheese reward, but there's also an electrified grid, a threat.
The high-stakes lunch scenario. The rat wants the cheese, but a light is on, meaning the grid is hot. Serotonin is what allows the animal to actively wait. It holds back the impulse. It says, don't go yet, bad things might happen.
So serotonin is basically the brakes, which, is necessary for survival so you don't run out into traffic.
Correct. But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a little concerning. They start talking about SSRIs antidepressants like Prozac or Lexapro.
Right. And these drugs work by blocking the reuptake of serotonin, so you have more of it just floating around in the brain. The logic is more serotonin equals better mood.
That is the standard model. But Montague brings up what he calls a dirty secret, revealed in a 2005 paper by John Dante. The brain it's a messy place. It's not just distinct pipes for distinct chemicals. When you artificially keep serotonin levels that high, that serotonin doesn't just stay in its own lane.
Where does it go?
It can get sucked up by dopamine transporters into the dopamine terminals.
Wait, run that by me again. The weight-negative chemicals getting sucked into the go-positive chemicals house.
Exactly. Because there's so much serotonin just floating around, the dopamine neurons, the ones that are supposed to be signaling reward and action, they absorb it. And then when they fire, they start releasing serotonin instead of dopamine.
So you're hitting the gas pedal, but the engine is injecting brake fluid.
They're releasing the negative juice, or the weight juice, from the go wires. Montague suggests this calls into question the really clean distinction we try to make between these systems.
That sounds... Well, it sounds like it would explain a very specific side effect I've heard people talk about.
It's emotional blunting.
Yes. People on SSRIs often say, I'm not sad anymore, which is great. I'm not crying all day, but I'm also not really happy. I don't feel that spark when I get good news.
It makes perfect sense if this mechanism is happening. They might have difficulty learning about positive things because their go signals are being diluted with stop signals. That sawtooth we talked about earlier just gets flattened out.
That is wild. It just highlights how interconnected these systems are. You can't just tweak one variable without affecting the whole algorithm.
And speaking of tweaking the algorithm, let's talk about how the environment tweaks us. Specifically, hunger.
Ah, yes. The hunger switch.
This is so crucial for understanding that dopamine isn't just one thing. Montague says that when you are starving-like, properly in a survival state, dopamine completely flips its function.
So hangry isn't just an attitude problem, it's a different operating system.
It really is. Normally, dopamine tracks positive rewards. Oh, look, berries, that's good. But in a severe deficit state, like starvation, you can't afford to just wait for good things. You have to avoid death. So dopamine starts tracking negative prediction errors.
It stops looking for the cherry on top and starts obsessively tracking how to avoid the cliff edge.
It's pure survival mode. And this leads to a very dark but fascinating insight Montague shared about torture.
Yeah, this was from Huberman's friend who studied this, right? It was a little disturbing.
It is, but it reveals the mechanics of the brain. The insight was that effective torture, if there's such a thing, isn't about maximum pain. It's about the relief from pain.
Explain that.
If you hurt someone a little, threaten to hurt them a lot, and that you don't, that relief registers as a massive reward.
Because in that flipped high-stress state, the absence of a negative gets processed by the brain as a positive reward.
Exactly. The brain says, I didn't die. That is a win. And dopamine reinforces whatever behavior led to that relief. It just shows how malleable this currency is. It values whatever it needs to value to keep you alive.
It's terrifying, but it makes complete sense evolutionarily. The brain will grab on to any lifeline it can find.
Even if that lifeline is just the cessation of pain.
Okay, let's pivot. We've been in some heavy stuff. Parkinson's, depression, torture. Let's talk about something that blew my mind in a completely different way. Bees.
The honeybee waggle dance. I love this connection.
So Montague works with bee researchers, and they found that bees have two distinct modes regulated by a chemical called octopamine, which is basically their version of dopamine.
Right. On one end of the spectrum, you have the concentration bees.
Yeah.
They see the waggle dance, which tells them exactly where the pollen is, and they fly straight to the food. They exploit the known resource. They are very efficient.
The straight-A students of the hive.
But then you have the bees on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
The ADBs.
The ones with attention deficit disorder?
Essentially. They get the signal, they start flying, but then they get distracted. They fly off course, they ignore the instructions.
And usually in our society, we'd say, well, those bees are broken, they aren't doing their job.
But here's the thing. You need both. If the hive only has concentration bees, they will strip the known flower patch bare and then starve because they don't know where else to go. The ADD bees, the explorers, are the ones who find the new flowers.
So ADHD isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's the evolutionary setting for explore rather than exploit.
Precisely. And in humans, we have both these modes inside us. Sometimes we need to focus, and sometimes we need to let our minds wander to find new solutions. Montague is saying that variation is crucial for the survival of the species.
This brings us to the most sci-fi part of the conversation, the connection between our brains and bees and artificial intelligence.
This is the convergence. This is where it gets really wild.
Montague says that the algorithms running in our heads, the ones dopamine uses, are identical to the ones in modern AI. Like, literally identical.
Mathematically identical. The algorithm is called temporal difference learning. It was developed by computer scientists Sutton and Bartow in the 80s to help machines learn from experience.
And it turns out biology beat them to it by a few million years.
Exactly. When neuroscientists looked at dopamine firing patterns, they realized, wait a minute, this biology is running Sutton and Bartow's code.
And now we've built it back in a code to beat us at games.
DeepMind used this exact reinforcement learning algorithm to create AlphaGo, the AI that beat the world champion at the game Go. They used it for AlphaFold to solve the protein folding problem.
Montague pointed out, this is the only time an algorithm discovered in biology has been externalized into a machine that then beats humans at their own game.
Think about the implication there. We have taken the logic of our own brainstem, the most ancient part of us that learns and survives, and we have given it to machines. And because machines can run millions of simulations in a minute, they are learning faster than we ever could.
That is humbling and a little scary. We basically exported our own source code.
We did. We externalized our own learning process.
But before we get too existential about the robot uprising, I want to talk about how they even know all this. Because Montague isn't just guessing, he's putting probes up people's noses.
It sounds like weird science, but it represents a huge leap forward. Historically, to measure dopamine, you had to wait for someone to get brain surgery. You can't just, stick a needle in a healthy person's brain.
Generally frowned upon by ethics boards, yeah.
But Montague's lab, working with Christina Zolano, realized they could place sensors on the olfactory epithelium.
That's the tissue way up inside your nose that's responsible for smell.
Right, and it connects directly to the brain. By placing a minimally invasive probe there, they can measure dopamine and serotonin in healthy people while they're awake, moving, and making decisions.
And what they found connects everything we've talked about. For one, they found that dopamine levels actually cycle in rhythm with your breathing.
Yes, the breath connection. It suggests this fundamental link between our metabolic state, our breathing, and our ability to update our expectations. It implies that how you breathe might actually influence how you learn or process reward.
They also use this to study something called the ultimatum game.
A classic economic game. I give you $20, but I get to decide the split. If I say, I keep 18, you get 2, you can either take it or reject it. If you reject it, neither of us gets anything.
Now, purely rationally, I should take the $2. It's better than 0, but I wouldn't. I'd be mad.
Most people reject it. We hate unfairness. And the nasal probes showed that dopamine acts as the currency to calculate that value. It takes money and fairness and anger and translates them all into a single value to help you decide, deal or no deal.
So dopamine is the universal exchange rate of the brain. It turns apples and oranges into a single number so we can make a choice.
Exactly. Whether it's love, money, food, or revenge, dopamine is the common denominator.
So we've covered a lot. We've gone from rain forecasts to bees to nasal probes. What does this all mean for us, the listeners, trying to navigate our lives?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we need to respect the algorithm. We're not designed to be happy all the time. We're designed to forage.
I loved the anecdote Montague shared about his wrestling days. He talked about working out until he puked.
Yes, vivid imagery. But the lesson was so crucial.
He talked about learning to manage the rising sense of panic.
Right, when you're wrestling or running a marathon or working on a hard project, your body eventually screams, stop. This costs too much energy. Panic.
It's a dopamine crash.
It is. But Montague says that by voluntarily entering those high-effort states and staying calm, you are training your dopamine system. You're teaching your brain that effort and panic don't mean quit. They are just data points on the way to a predicted reward.
It's the hustle, reframed as neuroscience. You're stretching the timeline of your prediction error. You're telling your brain the reward is coming, just not yet.
And that really is the key to resilience. If you require immediate dopamine hits, those immediate positive prediction errors, you become fragile. If you train yourself to endure the sawtooth of ups and downs, you become robust.
So here's a final provocative thought to leave you with. We've established that dopamine is an algorithm. It's a set of rules for learning and valuing the world. And we've established that we have now built AI that uses this exact same code, but runs it at lightning speed.
We have.
If these machines are running our operating system, but better, are we creating tools that will eventually understand our own motivations better than we do?
That's the big question. If the algorithm is math and the machine does the math faster, it might know what you want before you even do.
And if dopamine is just code, does that mean we can hack it? If breathing impacts it, if mindset impacts it, are we just passive passengers? Or can we actually rewrite the code while it's running?
I think Montague would say the code is always rewriting itself.
Yeah.
The question is, are you providing the inputs or is the world just doing it for you?
Something to chew on. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Until next time.